Hello and welcome to what is probably the silliest video that I've made in quite a while. Today we're talking about the top 10 monsters with fake passives. Nothing on this list has a passive, but these are monsters that behave as if they had one. It'll make sense as we go along. I'm asking you to trust me. This is a weird video. I've just been thinking about it for a long time, and the only way that I could work through these feelings was to write it down and stand in front of a green screen and present them to you. So I hope you like it. Generally speaking though, these are monsters that have some kind of passive effect under certain conditions. Starting us off at number 10, it's the Samurai with Sword of the Supreme Skywolf. Whenever the Samurais use a skill, they have a varying percentage chance to enter into a stance called the Sword of the Supreme Skywolf. And it does a lot. It's an empowered AoE damage dealing ability that ignores beneficial effects that would reduce its damage. Man, they have a % chance to activate something every time they attack? That sounds like a passive, which is exactly why they're on the list. But it's not a passive. It's very important that it's not a passive. Number 9. Hrungnir and all of the Barbaric Kings. I don't know why I singled out Hrungnir. Maybe it's because I think in my head he's kind of the most fun, but... So under certain conditions, the Barbaric Kings can unlock this sort of passive adjacent state. I really liked this change that added this feature onto the Barbaric Kings because it kind of showed where the game is at in terms of addressing old monsters. This whole 4-star family that was more or less kind of forgotten, well, except for that one weird period where Aegir was just absolutely dominating in RTA. But other than that, they hadn't seen much adjustment in some time, and then all of a sudden they all got this unique berserk state, and I think that that's just great. Now, alternatively, there are also these monsters that do something as if they had a passive, meaning they apply a certain debuff or try to do something on every single skill. It's a little more rare, but Second Awakened Zinc does it. On every single skill, Zinc tries to apply buff block, which might be the hardest sentence I've had to say all week, to be honest. Like, I was actually practicing that line before I started recording. Which makes Zinc indispensable for Steel Fortress. If you have 2A Zinc and you're not using him for Steel Fortress Abyss, what are you doing, man? So essentially, applying buff block on every swing could have been a passive, but he's got 3 skills, so there's no room for that. Thus, it's a fake passive. Prilea is in a similar boat, and Prilea's gotten a lot of attention recently because she's a part of a very successful speed team, including Teshar for Giants. And the reason for her inclusion is that she applies defense break on every single skill. And it gets even better because the one on the 3rd skill is actually guaranteed on bosses, because anything that's immune to stun gets their defense broken guaranteed. So even though she has 3 skills, you could almost imagine her having a similar passive to that of like Lauren or Joltan, where they try to apply defense break no matter what. Similarly, Lyn, the Light Amazon, sort of has a fake passive that says each hit will scale proportionately to the enemy's max HP. Her 3rd skill is particularly great, but the fact that this is on every single one of her skills is why Lyn has aged so well with Summoner's War. The fact that we still occasionally bust out a Lyn for Giants or Dragons or anywhere we need elemental neutrality plus max HP scaling damage, it's pretty incredible, and it's a testament to the monster. Next, we're moving away from monsters that do something on every single skill, and we're back to the passive under a certain clause. Right now, we're looking at the Dark Yennefer. This 3rd skill is really cool because it tries to do an AoE stun and silence, but it's got a really long cooldown. If only we had a fake passive that could circumvent that. Every time this unit doesn't get attacked, the skill cooldown for that is going to go down. So if you don't target the monster, you're going to have a tough time. So that clause at the end of the 3rd skill is something that kind of inspired this list. And a few people have this clause at the end, and one of those dudes that has it is Rakan. While his 3rd skill collapses on cooldown, he goes into this state where he's able to counterattack with a slightly less powerful version of the skill. This is really cool and unique because it isn't traditionally something we see on an active skill. It's something we'd normally see on a passive skill. Like, in a way, it kind of reminds me of, like, you know, the Dark Asura in the way that he counterattacks. But it behaves differently than that because you have to use it first. Fake passive. Number 3 on our top 10 is generically the twins, because there are a few twins that don't have passives. Like Maruna. Maruna's got 3 skills, but she still pulls a twin. Same with Talia. 3 skills, still pulls twins. Do we need to talk about why the twins are so cool? I think we understand why the twins are so cool. They do a lot of damage, and they also do a lot of shenanigans, especially when you combo stuff with Martina. Let's just move on to number 2. Vanessa! Her 3rd skill acts like a passive, because there was a time when it was a passive. But now it's way better because even after it triggers the first time, you can still use it in the future when the cooldown time is reduced. So it behaves like a passive, but silence stops it because it is an active skill with a cooldown time. Okay, let's briefly talk about a couple honorable mentions. These are things that to me just didn't quite make the cut, but I'd love to hear your guys' opinion in the comments. First of all, it's the Drunken Masters and the Kung Fu Girls. These both have percentage chances to activate other abilities. This is kind of along the line of what I'm thinking, but it's a pretty tight 10, and I didn't want to dilute the list. Do you think they deserve a slot? Do you think this counts? It's definitely on the borderline. Ramael and Judaya, the twin angels, is having 6 skills kind of like a passive? Not really, not like at all, actually. So that's why they're not on the list. I don't even know why they're in the honorable mentions. This isn't a passive at all. Number 1, the most passive-like thing that I could find that is not a passive. Riley and the totemists that aren't Aaliyah and Maya. When you're up against a Riley, you cannot stop her from stacking totems. Silence doesn't stop it. Oblivion doesn't stop it. There's nothing to stop. It's just gonna happen. She is inevitable. There we go. That's the list of the top 10 fake passives in Summoner's War. Give me comments of other monsters that you think could count towards this list.